Hey guys, tonight we're rewinding way back to an age without clocks, no calendars, and definitely no morning coffee. Welcome to the Stone Age. You're not the biggest hunter, nor the fastest runner. No, you've got a different role, one that requires patience, thick skin, and maybe a working knowledge of stitches. You're the teacher, the tribal keeper of all the know-how needed to stay alive when frostbite and falling rocks are just part of the school day. The air in the cave is heavy with the breath of 20 sleeping bodies, rancid herbs, and something that may or may not be last night's soup. You twitch awake before the fire rekindles, just a faint orange glow smoldering beneath a blanket of ash. Far across the walls, faded charcoal shapes wrinkle in the dim light. Mammoths, stick-legged humans, one horse that someone drew with 6 legs because they got bored. You blink the gritty sleep from your eyes and stretch under a fur blanket that's half bear, half mystery. Your back cracks loud enough to wake a squirrel. Welcome to another day of please don't swallow that rock, and no, we do not throw spears indoors. Honestly, you probably won't survive this, mostly because your students are 7-year-olds with sharp tools and absolutely no fear of consequences. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, where are you tuning in from tonight? Drop your country and your time down in the comments. I love watching our little bedtime tribe stretch across the globe. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You roll onto your side and squint toward the mouth of the cave. The light outside isn't quite day yet. It's that cold indigo shimmer just before sunrise. Time to get up if you want to steal a minute of silence before the children arrive with pockets full of dirt and gifts that are probably raccoon teeth. You toss off your fur wrap and gingerly avoid stepping in the mush pile someone left near the sleeping stones. Outside the cave, early haze drifts across the valley like breath. It smells of smoke, wet pine, and something distant and musky you'd rather not investigate. The wind cuts as you step barefoot onto damp soil, and your skin immediately protests. You do a little wiggle dance while grabbing your woven grass shoes. They're lopsided, but they beat frostbite. Your first job? Fire. Again. Figures. Nobody else seems to remember that teaching doesn't mean camp cook for eternity. You kneel by the fire pit beneath the leaning stone and dig coal from last night's ashes. You breathe into your hands while rubbing dried moss and shredded pine bark together. After a few sparks, the flame catches. It curls upward, stubby and orange, until it warms the stone you've dubbed the thinking rock. The clan starting to stir behind you. Coughs, the slap of hands on shoulders, the distinctive grunt of someone stretching way too enthusiastically. A baby starts wailing. Somewhere else, someone sneezes in a way that might have just cursed the weather spirits. Your classroom is really just a flattened patch of earth lined with river stones and small logs you dragged over last spring. You remark the center stone with today's glyph carved from charcoal, a zigzag sun with little legs. No one knows exactly what it means anymore, but the kids think it stands for listen up or get thumped, which seems accurate. Your teacher tools are already laid out nearby. 3 polished story stones, a bundle of bone tokens used for counting, last week's half-broken fire drill stick, and a leftover squirrel skull, which doubles as a pointer, and If needed, a tiny percussion instrument. Across from you, someone's trying to toss meat scraps to the camp dog while pretending they're still meditating. You shake your head. A small historical fact for today. Many early Stone Age clans lived in shared cave shelters or under cliff overhangs, clustering together for warmth, safety, and the joy of hearing every single person snore. Oh, and someone left a fish inside a tree trunk again. It's fermenting very quickly. You try not to breathe through your nose. The scent reminds you to check the bone stew someone always leaves stewing on a slab near the backfire. You peer into it, thick, grayish, and questionably bubbling. A lot of Stone Age meals were like that. Highly variable in flavor, but heavy on survival points. Lean meats, roots, berries, and yes, sometimes insects. You once accidentally taught half a lesson while chewing on a live beetle because you thought it was a plant pod. One quirky detail some people don't believe. Certain Ice Age tribes may have used mushed insect goop as skin salve or sunscreen, especially during high glare days in the snowy regions. Historians still argue whether it was for function, ritual, or just some prehistoric prank gone too far. With your fire burning well and your breath warming visibly in the chill, you finally take a moment to sit on your log and look skyward. Above, the moon is still visible, fat and round, playing peekaboo through streaks of pale clouds. You track it automatically. Part of your evening lesson today involves showing the older students how to map the stars using charcoal dots and finger-length measurements. You sigh softly, hands over knees. There's something sacred about this sliver of silence. Just you and the breath of earth and that ancient, heavy sky. Then, teacher, I ate a perfectly round pebble. You freeze, spin. There he is. One of your younger students stands triumphantly in the bushes, dirty hands raised like a victorious gladiator. He's grinning, wildly proud. You already know this is going to involve crying, possibly vomiting, and definitely zero remorse. The day has officially begun. You sigh, brush the charcoal dust off your tunic, and stand up from your log as the pebble eater lurches proudly toward you. He's about 6 winters old, if you're counting by how many times he's gotten stuck in a burrow. Bits of moss cling to his eyebrows like decorative accents, and his knees are suspiciously purple. Not bruised, just purple. You don't ask. You've learned not to ask. Behind him, the rest of your class begins to trickle in from all directions, some skipping, some limping, a few dragging sticks the size of their torso and declaring them official learning spears. One kid, Skinu, the one who thinks every rock is her spirit sibling, crawls in on all fours, hissing at birds. Classic Monday morning energy, if anyone had invented Mondays yet. Gathering your students is more like herding hyperactive goats who know arithmetic but refuse to admit it. And yet, here they are, your little tribe of chaotic apprentices, armed with bone daggers, feathers in their hair, suspiciously sticky fingers, and the relentless ability to ask, why? Until your brain cells turn into soup. You clap your hands with authority. Sit, you command, pointing to the circles marked out with stones. Well, sit. If your butt isn't covered in pine sap again, you mutter under your breath. They plop down in clumps, some cross-legged, others splayed sideways like they've just survived battle. A few are already trying to trade shiny pebbles under their fur capes. Education and capitalism begin early. Attendance? Forget it. Instead, You glance around to see which regulars are missing. Most are accounted for, but you don't spot Erg, the one who enjoys throwing dirt during fire safety lessons. If he's not here, that means you won't be hit in the head with a surprise squirrel. So, silver linings. You begin your morning address with something inspiring like, "Who remembers not to lick the colorful frogs?" Half the class raises their hands. That's progress. Sort of. Now comes the part where you actually try to corral their imaginations into something resembling a structured lesson. Easier said than done when one kid is trying to braid her own eyebrows. You take a rock pointer, a nice, smooth one, not the squirrel skull just yet, and begin to draw shapes into the dry earth in front of them. A wavy line, the sun, a little stick figure that you label with a careful click of your tongue, and, pointing dramatically, explain, "This is all of you." Groans. "And here's a bear," you add, drawing a large circle with claws. "This is how school ends if we don't pay attention." Suddenly, the groans turn into whispers and shocked giggles. Bears equals power. Move. It's not hyperbole either. Around these parts, bears show up when you least expect them. And last week's incident with the honey cache still has half the tribe layering themselves in mud ash to avoid detection. A real historical warning method. Many early hunter-gatherers used scent masking techniques, including mud, ash, and even rotten herbs, to confuse predators. You've tried to introduce this as part of hygiene class. That didn't go great. Now one of the newer kids, Barev, tugs your tunic quietly. He points to a large dent in his forehead, smiles with all his teeth, and says, "I found a new god." Classic Tuesday. You motion to a space near the fire pit and say, "Great." You can whisper to it during recess. He nods solemnly and sits cross-legged like a little mystic. Your lesson today is deceptively simple. How to recognize signs in nature. See, you're the only adult in the tribe crazy enough to walk kids through why certain birds fly low before lightning, or why mushrooms under birch trees should never, ever be a snack. You pat down the leather pouch at your belt and pull out your secret weapon, the bone bell. You ring it once. They lean in. Every kid knows the bone bell means it's time for official school and maybe cool stories involving wolves. You start with a ritual question. Where do shadows come from? Several hands shoot up. From the sun being shy, one shouts. From angry trees, another yells. Then there's from the sky holes leaking darkness, which, honestly, poetic. You nod at each, thoughtfully, because in many ways, no answer is truly wrong. It's early science meets bedtime myth, and part of your job is to balance explanation with wonder. The truth is, the concept of formal education didn't exist yet, not like we know it. Some scholars argue roles like yours were more spiritual or communal rather than structured, passing down knowledge in symbols, rhythms, and experiential memory. Today, that means storytelling. You raise your hands and begin the tale of the sunworm, a squiggly hero who crawled up the dark sky, bringing heat and light, only to hide when the owl of night flew past. Definitely not peer-reviewed, but the kids go wide-eyed and gasp with every beat. One whispers, "I saw the worm once in the lake." Of course he did. While you talk, one fringe-eyed kid near the back strokes a painted turtle shell and whispers something to it under his breath. That's Fico, your honorary apprentice. He's only 10, but thinks he's already elder-worthy. He once told you the moon spoke to him and asked for a snack. You let him be. Meanwhile, Two of the older girls start braiding their hair together like a low-budget rope bridge. You smack a stone near them for attention, gently but firmly, and they blink as if returning from a different universe. You redirect. Now it's time to review yesterday's knowledge. Edible root rhymes, which always helps them remember not to die. The group starts chanting with you, tapping palm to fist. Red on top, never stop. Long and thin, safe to begin. Bitter chew, that's your clue. If you cry, just say goodbye. Okay, is it scientific? Number, but it rhymes. And rhyme as a memory device appears to predate written language. It's your most reliable teaching hack. One tiny hand shoots up. Can we eat a tree? Depends which part. You reply cautiously, stalling while you mentally skim through toxic bark lessons. Then you hear it. The sound you're always bracing for. Footsteps, fast, stompy, and coming from the far trail by the fallen elder tree. Uh-oh. The rest of the class hears it too. Heads turn, jaws go slack. Coming down the trail are 3 more kids. Late, sticky, covered in burrs. One is missing most of a shirt and carrying something suspiciously feathered in a hand. The one in front announces loudly, "We found the thing again." You have no idea what the thing is. You don't want to know. It's too early for curses. You take a deep breath, close your eyes, and mentally switch gears. Looks like your next lesson might be sanitation. Again. You don't even ask what the thing is. Not right away. You've been doing this long enough to know it's usually dead, slimy, ancient, cursed, or somehow all 4. And probably on fire once. Instead, you tell them to place it gently on the curiosity stone and walk away. That's your system for dealing with miscellaneous weirdness. Just let it sit, let the flies inspect it, and decide whether it's sacred, edible, or Wednesday. You redirect the class to today's first real lesson: fire making. Fire is civilization, after all. It's warmth, protection, leftover mammoth kebab reheating. You wouldn't last a night without it, and neither would your students. So that earns it a place of honor in your curriculum, right after "Don't eat the yellow snow," and just before "How to scream." Loudly enough when you're being dragged by a large bird. You motion for the kids to form a wide circle around the fire pit. Not too close, not too far. You're trying to avoid a repeat of Burnt Toe Thursday. Thankfully, everyone cooperates, partly because they remember what fire can do, and partly because your learning circle is lined with thorny bramble twigs that no one wants to sit on by mistake. You kneel by the pit and reach into your worn satchel. Out come 2 objects, a battered hand axe and a piece of flint smoothed by years of use. You hold them up like prized treasures because, in a way, they are. Without fire, your job, your tribe, even your storytelling wouldn't last a full season. Mainstream fact alert. Early humans developed complex techniques for fire making at least as far back as 400,000 years ago, including the use of percussion, like flint on iron pyrite, and friction methods. And no, you're not switching to friction today. Your hands still ache from the last demo when you tried spinning a fire drill stick in front of the new kids and ended up accidentally starting a smoke alarm made of dry moss and screaming. You crouch low, place the flint just right, and strike. Sparks flash. Strike again. Spark, a hint of smoke. One sharp flick, and a tiny orange ember blinks into the world like a baby sun. You gently feed it into your nest of bark fluff and blow, slow and steady. And there it is. The small curl of fire your students all scoot closer to see, eyes wide, heads tilted like baby wolves learning their first howl. Then, from somewhere near your left knee, a voice pipes up. "Can I touch it?" You pause. Stare. Say the word you say about 400 times a day. "No." They all nod like they expected that, and then immediately start edging closer anyway. You divide them into pairs, both for supervision and so someone can swat the other if they get too bold. Each duo gets a rough fire kit of their own: flint, dried moss, and one overly optimistic student with sweaty hands. You walk around the circle, correcting their grip and coaching from behind when necessary. A toothless girl named Toma strikes her flint into her own thigh. She yelps, glares at it, and declares that flint is cursed. You pat her on the back, tell her that curse would make it stronger, and realize you kind of just supported superstition. Oops. Not that this group needs help with that. Case in point. Certain children believe that fire won't come unless the flint is first kissed by a goat. A completely unsupported theory, but very popular with the goat. For variety, you bring out your fire smoke words, ancient sounds and chants meant to remind students of rhythm and breath control while blowing embers to life. Science? Not really. Teaching strategy? Absolutely. Meanwhile, a boy tries to whisper his family's secret fire spell, which is just him dramatically humming while cross-eyed. Another kid blows so hard on her ember pile that she ends up coughing soot for 5 full minutes. Honestly, they're doing great. You make it into your 3rd demonstration before noticing the smell of singed hair. There it is, the first casualty. You run over and clap your hands near Jojo, who definitely leaned too close and is now cradling a very sad patch of smoldering bangs. She shakes her head, grinning, like some kind of fireproof lunatic. You douse her with a handful of cold ash, which she interprets as a blessing. "I am the Ash Queen now," she whispers with pride. Sure, make it a narrative. Historians still argue whether Stone Age learning was mostly observational or had structured demonstrations like you're giving now. Some believe it was more like guided imitation, with clever kids watching elders and copying everything from tool use to cooking. But in your tribe, you've slowly introduced some halting steps toward actual instruction, especially with something as volatile as fire. And judging by the increasingly smoky sky above your cave, it's working. Mostly. About 1/3 of the students have produced real smoke. 2 pairs have actual tiny flames, which you hurriedly chaperone into manageable piles so the cave doesn't become a funeral site. Again. One ambitious duo manages to create a fire so quickly they request Stage 2 Fire School, which apparently involves lighting a torch and yelling, "I am the god of light," at startled lizards. You make a note to handle that later. Across the learning ring, a debate has blossomed organically between a few of the older kids about whether thunder is sky anger or cloud fighting. You fuel the discussion with a casual, "Could be both." That really gets them going. With the fires crackling and anxiety levels only at a mild simmer, you launch part 2 of today's lesson: responsible fire behavior. A challenging concept, since most of your students think chucking a flaming stick is a form of expression. You explain how fire should never chase animals, how sparks can travel windward, and how to never fall asleep inside a fire ring. Like one uncle did that one time, and now he smells faintly of awkward stories. As things wind down, you assign one student to watch the embers and report to the wind spirits. He takes this very seriously, kneeling like a miniature monk. The others scatter to gather twigs, practice striking gestures, or just roll around in soot for reasons best not examined. You finally sit back and exhale deeply. The lesson was loud, chaotic, and nearly flammable. But the kids learned, and no one spontaneously combusted. That's a win, with the ash from your fire-making lesson still floating lazily through the air like sleepy snow. You begin preparing the next activity, a different kind of ancient teaching that doesn't involve so many potential third-degree burns. You're leading the class inside the shadowy cavern beyond the fire circle, where the temperature suddenly drops and the ceiling gets a little too low for your comfort. This is art class. More specifically, cave painting, a dreamy mix of storytelling, handprint chaos, and nervous bat relocation strategies. The students call it talking with rocks, which is probably about as accurate as it gets. You snap your fingers and gesture toward the cavern opening as kids take the signal to duck waddle inside. There's an excited energy in the air, and a little dread too. After all, this is where last week one student tried to draw a buffalo with 7 horns and managed to offend someone's ancestor spirit in the process. Long story. You slap the side wall twice. That's your polite way of warning the bats you're coming through. Above, soft flutters rise like blown silk. You walk slowly, heart thudding beneath your mammoth fur tunic, stepping over slick stone ridges and the remnants of some raccoon-sized offering no one's had the courage to move. Charcoal dust clings to every crevice here. You guide the students through the narrow corridor until you reach the wide chamber, the one with the older cave art. Faint mammoths, sun spirals, and abstract symbols line the wall like forgotten dreams. You're not sure who painted them hundreds of winters ago. No one is. Historians still argue whether the earliest cave art was done by trained shamans, communal groups, or even children as part of ritual play. You decide it doesn't matter, really. What matters is that the cave remembers. And now, it's your students' turn. The kids scatter over the walls like little soot goblins. You hand them each a smear bundle, charcoal wrapped in moss, dipped into a little paste of crushed berries, clay, and something that makes your eyes water when it dries. This is your voice, you say, enlarging your own charcoal mark beside the oldest glyph on the wall. Don't just draw what you see, draw what's yours. Jojo, newly crowned Ash Queen, dramatically presses both hands to the damp rock and slaps out a twin palm print she insists will ward off toe blisters. Honestly, you hope she's right. Barev walks straight to a darker corner and immediately draws what may be a goat giving birth to a comet. You're not sure, you give him a thumbs up anyway. Historical fun fact incoming. Paintings like these, some dating back over 30,000 years, used mineral pigments like ochre, manganese, and charcoal. And in some caves, researchers have found evidence of spit-blowing techniques, where artists chewed pigment and sprayed it out like primitive airbrushing. You've seen a few kids attempt that. Mostly results in spattering each other's faces. But, hey, abstract expressionism. While the artists begin their chaotic masterpieces, you wander through, peering over shoulders, correcting lines gently with your soot-stained fingers. One group of students has attempted a family portrait. It includes an overly muscular grandmother, 3 cats. You have never had cats. And what appears to be the river spirit with 6 glowing eyes. You resist the urge to critique perspective. They're trying. And besides, art in this age is more about memory than accuracy. Another small pair is working on time maps, a series of spirals and marks that show seasons ago events. You kneel beside them and hum softly in rhythm with their etchings. It's your way of emphasizing flow. Even if the timeline is just a vague series of dots leading to a stick figure getting bonked with an antler. Then there's Skinu. Of course, she isn't painting. Instead, she's crouched in the far corner, holding a bat wing carefully with a daubed finger and whispering, "You too come from the sky." Lovely. Hopefully not rabid. You make a mental note. Health check. Again. Someone near the opening squeals and slaps at a leaky root above that drips cold cave water exactly every 8 seconds. For a group that sets mini fires and battles bees for fun, these kids have surprising limits. Suddenly, one student gasps. He's found the mark again. You walk over quickly. Sure enough, scratched faintly into the oldest cave wall, a single spiral inside a handprint, carved deeper than usual. No one knows who made it. In fact, archaeologists, and also local grumpy elders, still speculate that some early cave markings may have signified shared memory locations or shamanic symbols. Others think kids just got really into branding their cave spots. You crouch beside him and say reverently, "This mark is older than our songs. Even older than you two's leftover goosefoot stew." The kids look suitably horrified. Glow achieved. The air is thick with charcoal dust now. Some stray lines have crossed over historic mammoth etchings, and one boy has drawn an advanced stick person holding what appears to be a flute. Cute. Except flutes haven't really arrived yet in your tribe's tool timeline. Or have they? You remember that flutes made from bird bone have been discovered dating back nearly 40,000 years. Some had 5 or more finger holes. So hey, maybe your accidental time traveler knows what he's doing. You tell him to add some kind of wind music glyph and keep going. It's not plagiarism if the original artist hasn't been born yet, right? Now, there's chalky laughter filling the chamber. One wall features a chaos tableau. Bears playing dice, stick people dancing, someone being chased by what you think is a cabbage. The kids cluster around, busting into hyena giggles. Yeah, so maybe not the most historically faithful recreation, but you let it slide. Because stone can be serious. It can also be fun. Then, just as you're thinking about how smooth the session's gone, thwack. A charcoal bundle hits your square in the collarbone. You blink down at the black smear now adorning your mammoth leather tunic. Slowly, dramatically, you turn. The culprit? Fico the mini mystic, holding up both hands like a cave crime magician and yelling, "It was a statement!" Seeing the opening, all the kids lose it. Within seconds, you're under a full-scale pigment assault. Smudges land across your forearms. Someone gets brave enough to paint a unibrow on your face. You stand still, arms spread like a charcoal-splotched scarecrow, sighing deeply. But honestly, it's kind of perfect. You hold up your own charcoal wand, face painted like a mischievous ancestor, and declare loudly, "Let the spirit-drawing duel begin." And for about 10 noisy, dusty minutes, the cave becomes a masterpiece of shrieking abstraction. Finally, when most of the pigment is gone, and at least 3 students have passed out giggling, you blow 3 sharp whistles through a carved reed. That means time to wrap up. The kids lie on the stone floor, fanning themselves dramatically. Their cheeks are red, their fingers blackened, and their souls, at least today, an extra ounce more alive. You quietly light one small oil sliver lamp and hold it to the wall. All those marks and shapes glitter under the flame like old magic waking up. You smile, and with your voice soft, almost a whisper, say, "Now, the cave remembers you." The moment the cave painting frenzy winds down and your students finally begin to file out into the daylight, faces streaked with mud, moss, and existential pride, you know what's coming next. It's the part of the day that no one looks forward to, yourself included, but you can't skip it. Not if you want any of these wildlings to survive long enough to become semi-responsible adults. It's time for predator drill. Outside, the air is crisper now. The sun climbed a little higher, casting long, warm stripes across the rocky cliffs and sending whispers through the grass. You stretch your limbs, careful to dust off your tunic and flick away what remains of your wildly inaccurate charcoal mustache. You gather the kids near the clearing down past the bone totem. A chewed-up old log, decorated with claws, feathers, and whatever else the kids find sacred this week. Someone tied a fish spine to it yesterday. It smells bold, and begin the soft, rhythmic chant that signals the start of the drill. Run, duck, freeze, yell, you hum, tapping a beat with your stone stick. They groan, every time, which is hilarious, considering this drill exists so they don't become saber-tooth chew toys. You clap twice. Positions. They scatter across the clearing, dashing behind bushes, throwing themselves flat in crunchy leaf piles, and instantly forgetting which direction hide uphill means. You mentally divide them into 3 groups. The sneaky ones, the loud crashers, and the ones most likely to trip over a root and get eaten first. The first round of the drill involves a mock charge scenario. You, creeping low with a stick wrapped in fox fur, playing the fearsome fanged beast that must not be named, even though it's really just your impersonation of the saber-tooth who yowled outside the cave last month. You whip your hips side to side, puff up your chest, and snarl so hard your throat cracks. The kids take off in every direction. Jojo screams like she's starring in her own one-girl theater show. Skinu climbs a tree. You didn't teach her that. She just invented it. Not the worst instinct either. 1 or 2 completely forget to run and instead start chanting to the spirits to distract the predator. Weird flex. Doesn't work, but it's amusing. You call it freeze. Half the group tumbles gracelessly to the ground. One wobbly child falls face down and doesn't move, then turns a thumb up to let you know it's just pretend fainting. You nod approvingly. Now you point and call out, "Yell!" A chorus of guttural, high-pitched howls erupts. Some throw their voices. One girl just hisses like a hawk. Another starts singing the edible root rhyme from earlier. That's new. This technique, the yell, is your people's best shot at startling, redirecting, or flat-out confusing a predator long enough to escape. It beats lying down and hoping not to look deluxe. Some Stone Age communities used coordinated shouts, communal drumming, or even leaf shaking to scare away predators, particularly when out foraging in groups. The concept of noise as boundary is ancient, though whether randomly yodeling at a saber-tooth would have the desired effect is debatable. Historians still argue whether predator avoidance rituals in early tribes were based on experience, myth, or just trial and error desperation. You pause between drills to hand out handfuls of dried pine seed for energy. It's chewy, slightly bitter, and almost certainly crawled across by at least 3 insects before reaching your satchel. But it's fuel. Then comes the sabotage round. This time, you don't say you're restarting. You just turn, wave casually at a student, and then bam, lunge forward into a pouncing leap with an obnoxious roar. Chaos. Fico throws a pebble and then tries to reason with you in a dramatic ancestor voice. Barev rolls down a hill and shouts, "I am unconscious." Jojo grabs 2 nearby kids and pulls them under her like a woolly shield. Ah, group sacrifice, lovely. One girl climbs right into a bush and somehow vanishes completely for 5 minutes. When she finally pops back out, wild-eyed and victorious, she's holding a toad. "Is this a weapon?" she asks. Eventually, once the screams die down and everyone's caught their breath, and you've confirmed that no one twisted an ankle or swallowed a bee, you gather them into a circle to debrief. "Which one of you," you ask pointedly, "froze in full sunlight and sang a berry song?" A small hand goes up. I thought if I was delicious, the beast would be gentle. The logic, twisted though it may be, earns a slow nod. You end with a safe zone dash. You call out, "Lightning fall," and the students sprint toward the fire ring like wind-struck antelope. Whoever reaches first gets to wear the honorary beak mask, basically a bird skull smooshed onto a head strap, which means they get to play the predator next drill. Spoiler, they always abuse this privilege. Today, Jojo wins, which means next week's predator drill will be less biodiversity and more interpretive dance. You let the students flop down and drink from her water skins. A few begin drawing in the dust, recreating the saber-tooth scene in exaggerated stick figure format. You can hear one of them say, "When the real one comes, I'm just gonna yell like the teacher does." Honestly, you're flattered. Of course, once they rest, they also start reenacting the drill in increasingly personal ways. One accuses another of selling them out to the beast. A whispered debate about proper yelling posture breaks out. You let it bubble for a while. Conflict resolution is tomorrow's class. As you pack up the fox fur decoy and hang it over a branch to dry, your thoughts wander back to the last actual predator encounter. It was 2 winters ago. Coldest season in a decade. The snow pricked your skin like stone fleas, and even the big hunters couldn't track in the deep powder. A saber cat had circled your camp for 6 nights, leaving ripple tracks in the snow and shadows at the cave mouth. The children wouldn't leave the fire ring. You ended up holding lessons with 12 kids curled against you under blankets, while you whispered about fire gods and ancestor guardians, and how some shadows are just trees pretending to be claws. That week, you became more than a teacher. You became safe. So yeah, these drills, they're loud, ridiculous, full of shrieking and falling and tree climbing, but they're also the difference between daydreaming about lightning worms and knowing exactly when to shout your name at a charging beast. And that balance, that's your whole job. The moment restlessness starts to creep back into the kids' legs and their predator simulation shrieks turn into slightly manic laughter, you clap your hands and announce everyone's favorite part of the day. Food sharing. And just like that, all injuries are forgotten. Lunch in the Stone Age isn't just a meal, it's a social negotiation, a miniature tribal ritual, and occasionally a war disguised in squirrel ribs. You lead them back toward the main cooking hollow, where smoke drifts lazily over the pit and the smell of roasted root marrow and stripped sinew hits the nostrils like a warm punch to the face. The midday meal's been overseen by the elders in rotation, basically whoever was guilt-tripped into kitchen duty. Today's stew is bubbling away, suspiciously thick, possibly containing snails or tow. But it smells edible enough to draw even the surliest students. You make them sit in a half circle around the feast rock, which is less rock and more smoothed chunk of boulder that kind of looks like a walrus if you squint. Each student has a personal food stone, flat slabs they lick clean after every meal, because sanitation hasn't advanced past maybe burn it yet. You raise your hands. Let the trade begin. The chaos starts immediately. Someone tries to barter a clump of roast roots for 6 wood lice. Another demands 2 bites of marrow in exchange for a shiny bird feather that may or may not be sacred. One ambitious student announces he's already chewed his squirrel bone, but offers the softened leftovers as a friendship gift. You shut that down fast. See, this isn't just unruly feasting. It's the moral education part of your Stone Age school day. In clans like yours, kids learn early that survival isn't just hunting. It's community. And community means knowing how to share food without stabbing someone with a sharpened breadstick. If breadsticks existed, they don't. But you dream. Many early human groups practiced communal eating rituals, especially around harsh seasons where sharing wasn't only kind, it was survival math. Sharp eyes saw who hoarded meat. Flatter eyes noticed who gave up their roots to the smaller kids. These meals teach social order when you don't have rules, charts, or emojis. As everyone gnaws on various bits of fiber and crunch, you float between conversations, listening. Toma, cheeks bulging with something definitely undercooked, is explaining how if you bury a berry under your tongue and dream hard enough, it'll grow roots in your brain and let you talk to fruit spirits. You nod, very seriously, and suggest she plants an onion next. Meanwhile, Fico is engaged in soft diplomacy, offering 3 roasted beetles to Jojo in exchange for whatever's in her leaves. She eyes him suspiciously, unwraps her meal, roasted lizard tail, and smirks. Power move. She eats it in slow, deliberate bites while locking eyes with him. Kindergarten politics, truly timeless. Overhead, birds circle lazily. One even dive bombs a meat strip, narrowly missing Barev's head, who retaliates by attempting to throw, no joke, his sandal. You kindly remind him that one does not fight sky gods with footwear. From your own pouch, you unwrap your meal. Not teacher luxury, just regulation mush. Grilled roots, some dried fish slivers, and what you hope is boiled turnip. You chew in slow, modest bites, so no one thinks you're storing secret sauce. You once got accused of hiding honey in your teeth, and that rumor took 2 weeks to die. Then someone suddenly stands and calls the question heard every lunchtime. Who gets the good piece? Ah, yes. You look toward the central meat, the smoking slice that's just a little more roasted, a little less sinewy. Usually the best bit goes to the bravest hunter or the wisest elder. But in your classroom, it's part of the weekly democracy experiment, which really just translates to loud noises and hand gestures until someone gives up. You raise an encouraging brow. Why should you get it, 5 hands shoot up. I caught the lizard. My stomach made thunder. I gave my leaf bread to that ant. In my dream, the meat chose me. My mom said banish anyone who says it isn't me. Each answer gets some oohs and a few groans. You play judge, jury, and culinary referee. Today, the prize goes to Skinu, who didn't beg, didn't barter, and spent lunch spooning stew into a younger student's chipped bowl. No one complains. Much. A couple of glares, one sarcastic applause, and that's it. You took a gamble pairing kindness with reward, and today it worked. You exhale. You're halfway through your day, and only one minor food-related meltdown. Success. There's a brief lull while everyone munches. Across the circle, a soft humming begins. It's Yari, the quietest student, singing a little song about boiling rabbit toes in river broth. It's soothing, horrifying, but melodic. You find a warm stone, prop yourself on it, and join the rhythm with a tap on your thigh bone. There's peace here for about 30 seconds. Then someone lets out a loud belch, and another starts reenacting the predator drill using a stew ladle as a spear. Back to full chaos. All right, you call out with a grin, raising your hands. Time for the circle of stories. They groan and cheer simultaneously. Half want to nap in a stew coma. The other half want to tell their version of the time a mammoth sneezed on a fire and caused the short winter. But no stories yet. First, the feast ends like it always does. You gesture toward the sharing stone and perform the ritual of gratitude. Everyone places the smallest scrap of food they haven't eaten on the flat stone slab. An ancient tradition you uphold because it reminds them, even empty-bellied, that there's something bigger, something watching. Anthropological studies suggest that offering rituals like this helped build early religious awareness and reinforce scarcity practices, even among the younger ones. Whether it pleases a sky god or just keeps the raccoons away, it's really anyone's guess. The kids approach one at a time, solemn for once, pressing uneaten morsels onto the stone. Bits of root, half-crunchy beetles, a suspicious leaf, even the final bite of Jojo's lizard tail. Not bad. Barev bows deeply, dramatically, and then tries to swipe a pebble from the offering pile as he leaves. You spot it immediately, flick him on the forehead with a stick, and he shrugs like it was worth a shot. You make a circle with your arms, nod toward the cave once more, and whisper the meal's closing chant. Stomach full, hands still wild, fire waits, and dreams walk mild. The kids whisper it back, uneven and sweet. That's the moment, the one you live for. Right there, between the laughter, the smeared faces, and the squirrel. Eyeball. Someone probably just stepped on. They're learning. Not just how to live, but how to be human. The laughter from lunch lingers in the air like spice smoke as you herd the students back toward the upper clearing. A flat expanse of wind-smoothed rock beneath the open sky. This is where the next lesson begins. Numbers, sky signs, and the bone chant. Yeah, it's math time. And if you thought keeping a straight face during stick-throwing competitions was hard, try getting 13 soot-smudged cave kids to count bones without someone chewing on at least one of them. You set the pace by lowering the lesson basket from your shoulder and unpacking today's tools of the trade. 3 long notched reindeer ribs, a handful of talon-carved tokens, and your prized sky collar, an antelope horn smoothed flat on one end for drawing lines in the dust. The students flop onto their usual spots, knees tucked to chests, some still finishing bites of stubborn root fibers. You tap the horn on your palm thrice. Silence settles. You like to think it's out of respect, But honestly, it's probably just everyone digesting. You begin softly. Everyone hold up your counting bones. They hoist their pieces, a jumble of sticks, knuckled stones, carved shards etched with lines. No one's set is the same. But then again, no 2 days of Stone Age math are ever quite alike. Today's lesson? Abstract tracking. You draw 8 notches in the dirt, whispering, "How many rabbit tracks between here and the moon's sleep?" A riddle, yes, but it opens the pattern, cause and quantity. Your students lean in closer, drawing similar marks beside yours. Some copy exactly, others get creative. Jojo draws all 4 of her notches in the shape of tiny legs. "These are running numbers," she whispers. Welcome to the Wild West of prehistoric math. Mainstream fact time. The earliest known counting tools were notched bones and tally sticks, some dating back over 30,000 years. Long before algebra, there was how many mammoth steps between 2 rivers? You teach math through movement, shadow, and animal metaphor, not because it's cute, but because that's how your ancestors measured everything, even time. You blow a short note through a hollow bird bone. That means shift to sky signs. The kids tilt their heads skyward. The clouds have parted enough to show that iconic stretch of blue, brushed with tufts of pale vapor. You raise your hornstick and sweep it across the sky, anchoring it between the trees and the tip of the cliff ridge. See that shape? A teeth cloud, Barev offers. A bird with 3 butts, another adds. Sky ladder, Fico whispers, staring hard. You nod at him. Sky ladder, you say, as if that's exactly what you were about to say all along. You kneel and begin scratching lines of cloud patterns into the stone dust. The students mimic you in miniature, using burnt sticks or their own fingers. This, right here, beginner sky mapping. Historians still argue whether early humans used clouds, star positions, or sun shapes to track time. But we do know many early cultures likely observed celestial patterns. To map migration, weather shifts, and ceremonial rhythms. Even without numbers or calendars, they used stories in the stars. You point toward the eastern slope where the sun settled earlier and ask, when the sun touches Red Cliff 3 times, what happens? Jojo raises her hand. The frogs scream. Not wrong, but not the answer you're fishing for. Storm season begins, mutters the quietest one. Yari, always half a second ahead. That's when the air groans and the cold hides in your paws. You smile. That's the closest thing to poetry you'll get during math. Next comes the chant. The kids form a half circle. You tap the base of one counting bone. One paw, one shadow. They respond. Another tap. 2 fangs, one howl. Rhythm grows. 3 stars, no fire. They chant it like music, call and echo, building memory through voice and repetition. It's not fast, it's not tidy, but it sticks. You've personally taught 3 entire generations the counting chant. That is, assuming you count Sandu, who still thinks the number 4 is cursed, and that anything more requires apologizing to the spirits. Baby steps. See, you don't just teach how to count sticks. You use chant to explain ratios. 1 hunter, 1 shadow, 2 hunters, 1 fire. That's not just math, it's village planning. You break off into pairs now. Fico gets paired with Yari, calculated. He needs grounding, and Yari needs to be reminded not everyone solves problems by meditating. You ask them to distribute chestnut tokens across 3 hide squares to trade for imaginary water skins. Fico hoards his pile and announces, I own the river now. You glide over and immediately tax him in the name of fun. Then, the fringe theory. Moment of the day, because every lesson needs a touch of mystery. You raise a small carved hyena femur covered in notches. What if, you say slowly, this was used to count not rabbits, but lives? The kids suck in a breath. Like tallying who's left after the mud plague? Or how many dreams one boy has? Or how many clouds pass until tooth moon? You let the mystery bloom. Some researchers speculate complex, notched bones may have been used to mark menstrual cycles, moon phases, or spiritual visions, rather than just livestock or food stores. That open-ended question, what are you really counting, is the heart of math in your classroom. You close the session with sky hands, a posture where everyone raises their palms to the sun and closes their fists with every imagined number. Warmth, time, taps, tugs. Numbers become memory, movement, myth. You take a moment to breathe deeply. The kids flick sand off their palms and roll onto their backs one by one, staring upward, whispering numbers in their special patterns. You allow them a few minutes of stillness. This part, the silence between thoughts, counts too. Then, without warning, one of them, probably Barev, lets out a very loud, long, unnecessary belch. The others lose their minds. Within seconds, you've got no math class, and most of the sky-watching crew is rolling across the turf dramatically, holding their stomachs either in empathy or sheer excitement over the acoustics of gastric rebellion. You clap thrice. Daylight's starting to lean westward. Time to swap out numbers for sharp things. The afternoon light falls warmer now, spilling across the stone clearing like liquid amber as you lead your students from sky counting back toward the edge of the camp where Flint Hill waits, your makeshift outdoor workshop for the next vital subject, tool making. This is not a drill. This is Sharpstone's 101. And if the words hands-on learning make modern parents flinch, they should try parenting in the Stone Age. Here, show and tell involves actual blood if someone isn't paying attention. You let that fact simmer in your tone as you walk, holding up a jagged rock and issuing your familiar warning. Today, if you like your thumbs, keep them. A few kids laugh. One gasps dramatically and clutches both thumbs to her chest like sacred eggs. Barev immediately begins waving his stone around like a wand and yelling, "Flintius Maximus!" You take it away. You arrive at Flint Hill, a gentle slope dotted with stone flakes, broken branches, and one weird rock nobody's been able to move since spring. The ground has a sit-polished patch you affectionately call Blister Rock. You direct everyone to sit a safe distance apart. Very safe. You've learned the hard way what happens when a flint chip flies into someone's ear canal. It's loud, traumatic, and oddly musical. Your kit contains all the classics. Practice antler hammers, bruised but manageable chert chunks, and small baskets with worn-out examples from past sessions. You begin with a demonstration, crouching low and balancing your napping stone on a piece of tanned hide. You select one nugget of flint from the pile and raise an antler hammer above it, poised and steady. You tap once. Fracture. Twist. Strike shear. A sliver slides away, glassy and perfect. You hold it up in the sun, so it catches the light just right. Your students all go, "Ooh!" One whispers, "You are the fire god." You wink. Historical moment for context. Flint napping was a critical skill, passed carefully through hands and generations, often taught through demonstration and mimicry. The earliest blades and arrow points have flake marks so precise, modern experts are still baffled by the craftsmanship. Which is flattering, until you remember how many of your kids still forget which end is sharp. Now you split them into groups. Each circle is given a nub of flint, a soft antler, and a collective warning. If we see blood, learning stops. If we see bone, someone else takes over the class. They don't laugh this time. They lean in with hushed reverence, little fingers wrapped around stones that hum with ancient danger. These aren't toys. These are lifelines. A blade can mean the difference between eating and starving, surviving winter or not. Sharpening equals power. And for the first time all day, your little monsters get serious. You walk among them like a cautious bird, tapping shoulders, adjusting fingers. Jojo cracks hers on the thigh bone first strike. Too eager. You adjust her grip, lower her elbow and say, "Let the stone lead." Fico, ever the rebel, is trying to nap with his eyes closed. For dramatic flair, you silently press a soft pouch of moss into his hand, your subtle way of saying, "Try this first so no one ends up with a forehead blade." Some students are naturals, Yari especially. Her cuts are small, intentional, consistent. She hums while she works, teeth biting the tip of her tongue. Beside her, Skinu arranges her shards in a perfect circle and whispers something in the direction of the sun. You don't even question it anymore. Meanwhile, Barev is now trying to invent reverse flint, which mostly means stacking chips and hissing at them until they become something. You give him a generous helping of praise for creativity, then shuffle him gently back toward real flint so no one starts sculpting a philosophy major. Then comes the quirky tidbit of the day trademark. "Hey," you say as you hold up a conical chip, "did you know some tribes thought stones had memories?" Gasps. You continue. "They said each flake remembered its origin, the cliff where the parent rock was born. So when you make a blade, you're not just shaping matter, you're waking up a story." One child immediately starts apologizing to his flint for chipping it. You let him have his moment. Up the hill, you notice clouds rolling in, those sleepy afternoon puff stacks that don't mean rain, but carry the taste of it. The wind picks up just as one student squeals in triumph. She's created an actual pointed tool. Everyone clumps around her, crowding, poking, complimenting, trying to claim they helped a little spiritually. You step forward and examine the blade. Crude, sure. Short, a little chunky. But it would cut. You raise it above your head and declare, "The line blade of the East is born." They all cheer. You ceremoniously place it on a flat stone with an offering of dry moss and one very squished berry. The point of this isn't just learning to make tools. It's teaching that shaping your environment is an earned right, not a talent given at birth. You make the world by touching it carefully, again and again. Historians still debate whether tool-making roles were gendered or open to everyone. Your clan seems to embrace all learners equally, though Eva, the High Elder, once claimed only those blessed by the river wind should handle obsidian. You haven't seen a river wind yet, though one girl insists it smells like frogs. Eventually, as students' hands cramp and their piles of stone chips grow, you slow the lesson with a rhythm shift. You begin singing, low and slow. One mark, one flake, two flints, one break, 3 cracks, 4 dreams. Let the edges make their schemes. It's the chip song, a mnemonic you learned as an apprentice in another tribe. You only remember 7 of the 13 original lines, but the kids don't know that. They echo the verse until it melts into quiet humming. Little fingers dance gently now, brushing the stones clean. You watch their shoulders fall. One by one, the tools are laid down with reverence. You collect the blades into a bundle of woven grass and hide scrapes. They'll be inspected tomorrow. Some will become arrowheads. Some just reminders of tiny fingers learning big things. You did well, you say, voice low but weighted with truth. The land listens through your hands. That gets a few soft smiles, and one child who nods so enthusiastically that his hand-napped blade falls out of his lap, directly onto his own sandal. Everyone flinches. He lifts the blade, unharmed. It knew I wasn't ready, he whispers solemnly. You nod. Respect. The sun's slipping further now, long slashes of amber across stone and grass. You dust off your tunic, brush the flint chips away, and motion them back toward the fire circle, because dusk is creeping in and you still have one last lesson to tell. Something with a story, something older than flint. You can feel story hour before it even begins, not just from the light slipping golden and low across the horizon, but from the way your students start to slow down. They start to pace themselves, wrapping up flint projects carefully, instinctively packing away stones and tokens like squirrels, saving it all for winter. You don't rush them. Story time isn't something you start. It's something that grows around you. The fire pit is already glowing when you return to the ring. Someone, probably Yari, has added a few pine needles, and the scent curls out like memory incense. Your students shuffle to their places without you even calling. A few try to look cool about it, like it's no big deal. Others hug their knees with excitement. One brings a stew ladle, just in case it becomes part of the story. You sit on the same flat rock every time. It's worn smooth beneath you, shaped almost like a seat now. No one admits it, but you all call it the story throne. You lean back slightly and let the firelight paint your cheeks, waiting for silence. It comes slowly, naturally. No yelling, no threats, just the hush that falls when children know something important is about to be told. You look around the circle, eyes skimming over leaf-covered foreheads and scavenged necklaces, before locking eyes with the oldest boy, Turo, the one who always acts unimpressed and never believes a word. Tonight, you begin, we speak of the lightning kneecap. 8 gasps, 1 snort. Turo raises an eyebrow. You've got them. This is a tribe favorite. You always save it for moments when attention is fragile, and the wind is just cold enough that no one dares fidget too long. You lean forward, voice low, captivating. There was once a woman, old and bent but fierce. Her name was Aisha. She walked with a limp and carried a crooked stick that glowed when storms came close. They say when her knee clicked during rain. Thunder answered. Jojo whispers, because it was her fate joint. You nod solemnly. Exactly. You let the fire crackle a bit before continuing, and with every flick of flame, their eyes sink deeper into the past. A time before their time, a story wrapped in smoke and shadows. The details, of course, evolve with every telling. Sometimes the kneecap explodes. Sometimes it summons wolves. Once, someone declared it could predict root growth. which was very controversial. You flick a coal with a twig, and a burst of sparks flies up into the night. They say Aisha stole fire from lightning itself, you murmur. That she climbed the sharp mountain and reached her hand into the sky, letting storm strike bone. And when she came down, her kneecap glowed without burning. A candle of thunder lived inside her. All the kids go wide-eyed, except for Fico, who looks suspiciously like he wants to marry her, or become her, or both. Did she teach? Someone pipes up. You nod. She passed knowledge through whispers, through knee pops, and sometimes through the way she limped in certain patterns. Every limping circle meant a new season would come, or that a goat would be born with two tails. Both happened once. This kind of storytelling isn't just for fun. Though you're definitely working the theatrical pauses, it's how knowledge travels before there's ink, before letters. This is the Stone Age textbook, written in firelight and memory. Scholars believe oral tradition was the primary form of both education and history for much of prehistoric life, especially within tight-knit nomadic or semi-nomadic clans. And here's the fringe bit, whispered only during late story hours. Some believe that hallucinogenic root brews given to elders helped activate memory visions, where whole lineages of events came pouring into their minds. You mention that lightly, but everyone glances at Skinu, who has already declared she's root-dreamed twice, and both times the vision was just a suspiciously friendly elk. You open a palm toward the group now. Who remembers the chant? Little hands shoot toward the night sky. Together, they start. One knee stirs the wind. 2 knees crack the flame. 3 knees break the mountain. Turo. That's too many knees. You raise a brow. Never doubt the power of myth-math, you say solemnly. Then your voice drops. This is the best part, the story's twist. But not everyone believed her. One young man, brave but prideful, challenged her. He said her knee was just old, not magic. He taunted the storm, climbed the same mountain. You trail off? Raise a hand. And? They whisper. The dramatic ones already know. Your eyes sharpen. He came down with 2 lightning scars, one on his arm, and one where? A dark pause. Then Jojo declares, his butt! Everyone erupts. You grin. You always allow just 1 butt reference per story session. Keeps morale high. When the laughter fades, you quiet them again with a soft rustling sound, a bone branch you use like a conductor's baton. The mood settles one last time. You close the story the way you began it. They say the woman's knee still echoes in the cracks of thunder, that when you feel your own joints pop before the rain, it's her, reminding you that even old bones can shape the world. Even pain can light a fire. The kids are quiet now, full of glowy stillness, story-fed. That space between silence and reaction is the real gold. Turo looks like he's trying not to admit the story was awesome. Skinu pretends her knee hurts in a quiet tribute. Yari just nods once and sketches something invisible in the dirt, probably Isha's staff. Fico whispers, would marriage to Isha be illegal? And you tell him to talk to Eva about that. The story lives inside you now, you say softly, standing. But it can't live alone. Say it again, and the cave remembers. It's your closing motto. No one skips it. Their voices echo together in semi-harmony. Say it again, and the cave remembers. You smile. The sun is nearly down now, and the wind carries that sharp edge of gathering night. Shadows stretch long across the clearing. Time for the final shift of the day. You gather your story sticks, nod to the lingering warmth of the fire, and say the 6 words that bring all future hunters to sudden attention. Time to meet the wild student. You say the words again, a little slower. Time to meet the wild student. The ring of soot-smeared children immediately tightens into a buzz of excitement, unease, and thrilled anticipation, the way only students can react when the lesson plan suddenly involves that one kid. The one everyone knows, dreads, and secretly admires. Sure enough, through the low rustle of dusk leaves and a suspicious caw overhead, you hear it. The unmistakable sound of heavy stomping, something wet being dragged, and the unhinged cackle of a returning chaos goblin. The wild student has returned, and this time he's got a raven. The bird's perched on his shoulder, staring at you with one obsidian eye half-lidded like it's too cool for this timeline. Well, that's new. You brace yourself. Jet, son of the clan chief, self-declared storm whisperer, enthusiastic bone collector, and a recurring lesson in patience, emerges from the trees like an action figure no one approved. Shirtless, scratched, smeared in berries, barefoot, and wearing what appears to be half a raccoon as a cape. He's got exactly no pants. Again, wide grins spread across the student circle. Turo gasps. He's got a real sky hawk. It's a raven, but you don't correct him. No one ever wins against skyhawk branding. Jet halts in front of you, plants his feet in the ground, and proclaims, "Teacher, I have returned from the spirit cave. I bring wisdom from the crumb-eyed ancestors." You blink slowly. Why no pants? He frowns deeply, as if that is the confusing part. Because they were weak. Vico nods solemnly, like this makes perfect sense. Jet holds aloft a bundle of what might be feathers, leaves, and old fish bones. I bring offerings for my test. Ah, yes, his vision quest. A trip the chief insisted on after Jet flooded the communal hide-drying pit trying to make rubber. He'd been sent out with food, a walking staff, and instructions to find spirit silence. Apparently, spirit silence looks a lot like disintegrated trousers and a raven with boundary issues. But Jet is no ordinary student. He's the kind of chaotic gift you receive once in a generation. A muse, a storm, a walking open-ended field trip, and, crucially, the youngest son of the chief, which means he's technically unpunishable. You gesture to the rest of the students. Class, today Jet will demonstrate the lesson of return. Collective gasp. This is a Stone Age tradition you've lightly structured into a teaching moment. The concept: when a young tribe member takes their first solo venture, vision quest, hunt, survival dare, they return full of madness and metaphor. And it's your job to help transpose that into something coherent, so the knowledge isn't just inside them, but woven into the group. Jet, you say. In 3 words, what did the spirits tell you? He holds his arms straight out as the raven shifts dramatically. Eat more shadows. Okay. You raise a brow. And what does that mean? He pauses, still figuring that part out. Fair. You turn to the students. So we now open the circle. Learning begins with witnessing. You step back and let him take center fire. Jet begins pacing in an erratic loop. The spirit cave, he says, was not a cave. It was inside a waterfall, upside down. Tomo immediately whispers, "Whoa." Jet continues, voice climbing with drama. I followed a frog and it sang to me through its ribcage, and the bird came. Not this bird, a different bird, and it told me to build a map from bones, which is when I lost the pants. The raven croaks once, very deliberately. Barev leans into Jojo and whispers, "Do you think the bird's possessed?" Jojo says, "No. Just judgmental." Jet reaches into his homemade pouch and produces 3 items that absolutely do not belong together: a snail shell, some pine resin, and a perfectly round pebble painted with a stick figure, possibly wearing a crown, possibly on fire. "This," he says solemnly, holding it high, "will steer the tribe into the age of clarity. You accept the offering very slowly. Now, here's the amazing thing. Wild students like Jet have existed as far back as we've been telling stories. In every community, there's a role for the unpredictable, the risk-taker, the seer whose mind walks sideways. Anthropologists call them tricksters, vision carriers, boundary crossers. You just call them Assign Everyone Helmets Day. And the truth is, you need him. Because while regular students memorize the chant, students like Jet rewrite it. Sometimes accidentally, sometimes not. You tap the ground with your fire stick. "So," you ask the group, "what do we learn from someone who returns barefoot and hungry, but carrying a bird and prophetic energy?" Silence. Then Turo blurts out, "That maybe we shouldn't judge the pantless." Jojo adds, without missing a beat, "And that bird poop is part of the journey." Yari shyly offers, "Sometimes, the best roads aren't ones you understand." You nod slowly. The raven agrees by pooping lightly near your foot. "It's fine." "Then let it be written in the ash," you say. Today, Jet returns, not just as a wanderer, but a witness. Jet does a slow-motion bow, the kind of thing you know he's been practicing in puddles since yesterday. The kids erupt in applause. You end the moment with your ceremonial phrase. The path coughs once and tells no lies. No one knows what it means. It just feels right. As a finale, Jet draws a symbol in the dust with a stick. 3 waves, an upside-down frog, and a dot. Skinu gasps. "That's the spirit syllable for thirsty ghost," she whispers. Or it's a frog doing a handstand in water. Could go either way. You guide everyone through a moment of quiet breath. You do this every time someone returns from a quest. A reminder that the wildness of experience must be softened for teaching, that the raw fire needs shaping. Jet hands off his raven to a stunned student. "He bites liars," he warns. It's unclear whether that's a joke. The bird leans in, looking very emotionally complex. With that, the dusk deepens. Crickets begin their scratching songs. The fire pops once, startling a few stragglers. And you? You exhale. The wild student has returned, more or less intact. Tomorrow, you'll probably have to explain why someone's now attempting to trade moss for feathers, or why Fico is convinced snails hold memories. But tonight, Jet sleeps with one eye open and a smug raven perched above him. Your living, walking thesis project in the time before books. The moon is beginning its slow climb now, casting a silver glaze over the camp, and your students are winding down, mostly. The fire crackles quietly, and Jet, still radiating from his dramatic return, is at last wrapped in something resembling a tunic, while the raven has claimed a perch on the story throne like its own tenure. But the day's not done. Oh no. You still have one of the hardest lessons ahead. A rite that blends historical assessment, social expectation, and unfortunately, parent involvement. Yes, it's time for the parent circle. You sigh. Even saber-tooth drills are easier than this. At least they only look like they want to eat you. From around the perimeter of the firelight, the taller shadows begin edging inward. Mothers, fathers, drunken uncles, and at least one grandparent who never speaks, but always shows up holding fermented berries in a bark bowl. You incline your head and offer the ritual greeting. May all your goats still be present. A murmur of grunted replies follows. That's a win. You glance around. They've brought offerings. A lump of smoked fish, a necklace of cracked shells, and confusingly, what appears to be a perfectly dried frog. Parent meetings in the Stone Age aren't just updates. They're bargains, tributes, and sometimes elaborate social traps. You light a smaller side fire, low and flickering, the discussion flame. Every parent circle has one. If it dies before you're done, untold curses could fall. Or at the very least, someone will lose a sandal in a symbolic gesture of disapproval. You begin modestly, unrolling your bark scroll. More scratched notes than readable script, but the parents don't need to know that. First up, you cover JoJo's progress in non-combustive fire management. There's a mix of nods and polite gasping. She only lit her own sleeve once this week, you say proudly. Next up, Fico's flint skills have improved, though he still insists every shard whispers back. You tactfully frame that as advanced symbolic communication and see a few eyebrows rise approvingly. Parents love phrases they don't fully understand. Now comes Barev. You feel the air shift. You explain, carefully, that Barev has shown excellent initiative in gathering supplies, but also declared himself king of the moss economy and has begun trading imaginary tokens for real squirrel pelts. One parent snorts, another mutters, like his father. Ah, that explains the drama lineage. As you continue, discussing each child's progress through storytelling memory, tool handling, predator drills, and diplomatic food etiquette, an uncomfortable hush starts to descend. You know what's coming? It happens every time. Someone's disappointed. Someone thinks you're doing your job wrong. It's usually Eva, but this time, it's someone new. A wide-shouldered hunter, draped in a wolf pelt heavy with dried blood and ceremony, ash, clears his throat. Soren, Turo's father. The stars say my son must be hunter strong by next moon, he rumbles, but he still crouches like a frightened otter in predator drill. There it is. Not a complaint, as much as a challenge to your authority via thinly veiled discontent masked as astrology. Classic. You respond with an even tone, keeping your hands visible, open-palmed. He crouches because he surveys first, you say, just as hill cats do before the pounce. There's a lull, then a fire pops, then a nod, small, dignified. You know you've survived the challenge for now. Still, the tension simmers. Another parent speaks up. My daughter dreams of the sky ladder. Her mind drifts. You must anchor her. That's Skyla's mother, always terrified that too much wonder will weaken her child's survival drive. You pull out the string figure Skyla wove earlier, a simple loop of sinew and bone knots. She sees patterns, you reply. She will one day map the winds before they change. The murmurs turn contemplative. Someone sniffles, maybe from pride, or the dried frog. Hard to say, really. Here's the truth. Being a teacher in the Stone Age means you often stand in the space between generations, older folks full of scars and grit, and younger ones with dreams too weird to tame. Your job is to translate both languages without getting clubbed. Parental involvement wasn't just expected in early tribal settings. It was often embedded into educational norms. Knowledge transmission, punishment, and reward were all community-based. What you call lessons today were once just strategies for making sure small humans didn't get eaten by leopards. But back to your very precarious round table. Someone quietly places an antler charm at your feet, a sign of honor and cautious approval. That helps. Then, of course, it happens. A shriveled voice from the back says, "And when will they learn the binding song?" Everyone freezes. You swallow. The binding song, an old ritual involving knots, breath rhythms, and a slightly cursed chant, said to create deep group memory, but also maybe summon ancestral geese. You can't quite tell if it's symbolic or metaphysical. The jury's out. Soon, you say calmly. They're almost ready to remember something that hasn't been sung in many winters. It works. The speaker leans back. Somewhere, someone hums a half-verse of the old tune. The fire flickers blue for a second. Maybe a coincidence. Probably. You steer the circle toward closing. One by one, the parents lay their offerings by the fire, a gesture saying, "We see what you're doing. Please do it better." You whisper the teacher's reply. They learn with your bones beneath them. So do I. The flame flinches in the wind, but holds. This little ceremony, equal parts performance, politics, and prehistoric Yelp review, is crucial. It's their insurance, and yours, because when the moons shift and the animals move through old paths and the frost bites harder than expected, what they've learned here in this dirt circle might be the difference between their child sheltering the weak or joining them. As the last parent rises and backs away, you let your breath out slowly. The parent circle survived. Flames are still burning. Not bad for a day where the chaos quotient included a pantsless prophet and one near miss with raven poop diplomacy. Your voice cracks only a little as you say, "Time for torches." The hunt practice begins. A new spark lights in their eyes, and the final lesson of the day now waits, mouth open wide. The parent circle dissolves into the growing shadows, and you can feel the shift in the air. The casual warmth of the daytime has fully retreated now, replaced with that cool, alert stillness that settles over the land just before the first stars blink open. You stand and rub your palms together. One quick clap. Olders, with me, it's time for night hunt prep. The younger kids glance up with fleeting envy as their older peers, those nearing their first sanctioned night outing, rise slowly, trying and failing to look casual about it. Some carry practice spears, others cling nervously to charms made of tightly knotted sinew and smelling herbs. One wears a bone necklace of questionable origin, which you confiscate immediately because it belonged to the corpse dummy from yesterday's scamper drill. You round them up near the torch circle, poles of bundled dry grass dipped in pine tar, lined vertically in a wide ring. Fire waits at their tips, heads unlit in the dimming dusk, like an exhale that hasn't left the lungs yet. Tonight, these students don't get fairy tales. They get the truth. And maybe, if everything goes well, graduation to the realm of almost trusted with anything sharp at night. You begin without flair, low voice, even tone. Tonight is a night for remembering how easily we're eaten. That gets some nervous laughter. Barev, of course, claps like it's a party. Jojo growls into her own armpit to prove courage. You ignore it. You pick up 2 long spears marked with charcoal rings. These are for demonstration. Ritual tokens, really. No one will stab anything. Hopefully. Before you hunt, you say, pacing slowly around the flame ring, you must learn how to be hunted. You turn sharply. Turo, you're a boar. Run. He blinks, hesitates. Now! He takes off awkwardly into the knee-high grass, grunting like a wild pig. The other students grin. You nod at Jojo. Track him. Describe his path to us. She scampers to a ridge, lowers her body in a near-perfect crouch, and begins narrating his movements in a whisper chant. 2 steps. Pause. Shift right. He hit crunch grass. See? There. You let her lead the group into a moving circle, tracing, theorizing. It's reverse hunting. Step 1 of the 4-phase lesson. Become. You're teaching not just how to throw, but when not to. You explain the rhythm of the forest. How early humans studied animal patterns with an intimacy we can't imagine now. Not watching for prey, but becoming the predator's mirror, copying speed, trace, breath. You teach them how to tighten a grip without tensing the arm, how to walk as if they weigh no more than shadow, how to wait longer than hunger wants you to. Then you flip the lesson. Now, you say, low and sharp, imagine you're being hunted. That quiets the group again. A different kind of stillness this time, one that spreads under the skin. You snuff the perimeter torch. Pair up. The older students group off instinctively. Turo pairs reluctantly with Fico, which will be messy but surprisingly balanced. Yari moves without being told. Jojo snaps her fingers and claims Jet, who now has pants again, but not much else in terms of dignity. The hunt drill isn't about weapons. It's about intuition. 2 kids hide, 2 hunts, then they swap. You line them up, nod once, and whisper, "The night is listening." And just like that, they scatter into the gloaming. You follow slowly, torch unlit, letting your senses spool out like invisible threads. Owls whisper overheard. A fox coughs in the thistle. Somewhere, an old boulder moans as it cools. This is your classroom's final form. Dusk, breath, and half-heard stories in the grass. 1 pair fails the drill spectacularly. Fico is found immediately. He'd buried himself in leaves and then forgot to stop humming. His partner, Turo, is too busy trying to stalk him sarcastically to be of any use. You set them on a second round, instructing them to pretend it matters this time. Another interesting duo, Yari and Barev. She trails him silently for so long he forgets he's being hunted, only to scream and trip when she taps his shoulder. Scaring someone after the hunt, you explain gently, is not bonus points. You regroup by the torch ring with the first wave of pairs, all sweating, knuckles itching with excitement, and that fizzing energy known only to kids on the edge of coming-of-age rituals. You gather them in a long crescent and pull from your satchel a final teaching object, a curved tusk tip wrapped in aged sinew braid. This, you say, belonged to the last teacher. Gasps, the real kind, the silent kind. A few of them have heard rumors. You let the silence grow legs. He taught the eldest in the tribe now, you explain. He lit the torches in storms. Once, just once, he defended a student from a bear using nothing but song. Historians, the future ones mostly, still argue whether Paleolithic teaching objects like this tusk were actual artifacts tied to individual educators or ceremonial tools for group ritual. In practice, it doesn't matter. Here, it's the closest thing your classroom has to a diploma. You tap the tusk against a student's hand. Jet, you returned from your vision quest, past the wild student right, swallowed some bugs. Congratulations. He beams. You turn next to Yari, placing the tusk gently in her lap. You move like a ghost, but think like a slingshot. You're ready. One by one, not all, but some of your oldest, get tapped by tusk. It's a quiet rite. The wind tugs a few more strands of smoke skyward. The fire turns blue for a second again. The moon looks like it's listening too. You rise to full height. When you return from the night hunt next moon, you say, you will no longer be students. You will be keepers. There's a pause. Then, slowly, Yari asks, what will we keep? You smile. Not an easy one, a tired one. The smile of a teacher with too many stories to pick just one. You'll keep us. You can see it land in their hearts like a quiet stone in an undisturbed pond. Moments later, you light the torch tips, one by one. The air flares warm again. Jojo watches it curve like sunrise. Barev pokes his flame with intense concentration, possibly trying to toast a beetle. Jet tries to hand the raven to you, as if it's part of the ceremony. You politely decline. As the students walk back toward the main cave, tired and wobble-limbed, you remain by the torch ring, watching their shadows stretch toward who they're about to become. They're getting close. Not ready, but close. Tomorrow, you'll practice tracking again. Tomorrow, someone will probably bite someone else in a defensive formation. Tomorrow, the moon will shift. But tonight, they stood within fire's kiss and did not flinch. That's something. The torches hiss behind you as one by one they dwindle, each a little comet burning down to sleep. Your students have returned to the cave, some clambering into fur nests, others rolling themselves into piles like sleepy puppies, limbs everywhere. Someone's humming an old chant about owl spirits, completely off-key. You'll fix that tomorrow. The night settles across the valley like a bare fur blanket, soft and oddly heavy. You walk slowly back through the main path worn into the earth from seasons of feet and dragging sticks, your own souls pressing lightly, quietly. For the first time today, no one is following you with wide eyes or questions about frogs with teeth. You pass under the leaning tusk arch, two mammoth bones you and the previous teacher set up seasons ago in a fit of structure hunger, and pause beside the flat stone ledge near the cliff's lip. This is your edge of the world spot, your moment of solitude, teacher time. You're alone, and you take that in, slowly, deliberately. The valley stretches before you, darkened hills folding like the limbs of some ancient sleeping beast. The river down below catches a little moonlight and flickers faintly, like a sky thread tossed down from the stars. You exhale. Today, you've stopped a charcoal war, explained predator ambush physics with vegetable metaphors, survived a pantsless prophecy, negotiated with 5 parents and a mildly cursed raven, and somehow taught subtraction using bones and a goat-shaped cloud. Not bad. Not perfect, but not bad. Your fingers find a pouch tied at your hip. The worry pouch, your students call it. Inside are 3 objects: a broken fire drill, a discarded counting token, and the curved carving you found earlier this week in Skinu's pouch. It's a simple thing, that carving. Sharp-edged, almost decorative. A tusk shard shaped like a face. Maybe human, maybe bird. The eyes are deeper than they need to be. And it doesn't match your current tribe's stylistic patterns. You turn it over in your hand again. No one claimed it. Not even Skinu, who insists it followed her home. You're not one to jump to spiritual conclusions, mostly. But the energy it carries is peculiar. The hollow kind. Like it remembers something you were never taught. Historians still argue whether early teaching tools had symbolic or mystic significance. If objects like this were simply tokens, or if they held stories, roles, or curses. The line between lesson and ritual is hard to trace this far back. For all you know, you're holding the syllabus for a shaman's entire wind-based curriculum. You stare out toward the cliff's edge and whisper, "Do I teach too much?" Not a loud question. Not really for the sky. More for yourself. The weariness in your bones grows louder these days. The spaces between your knees don't bend like they should. You never say anything during morning lessons. But when Jet dropped that squirrel skull today and you bent to pick it up, your whole back staged a quiet protest. Something inside you knows the truth. This will not last forever. You won't say it out loud, not to the students, not to the elders, but you feel it, like the way birds circle when they know the wind will shift. Your own stories are beginning to reach the part where the hero quietly walks into forest dusk to make room for the next. That next isn't here yet. Not quite, but she's close. You glance down toward the cave opening. There's Jojo, curled up near the ash pit, her soot-covered cheek lit blue by night glow. Yari's sitting up on her mat again, sketching the moon's curve on the wall with a char stick, quiet as a song. Jet is still whispering to the raven, who looks disturbingly like it's listening. One of them will take your place. Maybe not today, maybe not next month, but soon enough. And when they do, what will they carry? What parts of your world will live on in them? Will they remember the funny names for bones? Will they keep the lie you always tell, that no child fart has ever woken the spirits? You hope so. You reach down and open your teaching pouch, taking out the 3 smoothest stone tokens you own. 1 basalt, 1 river jade, 1 white limestone. You hold them in your palm like your ancestors. Around them, your fingers close, firm, gentle. You whisper the closing words of the old voice instructor's chant, the one passed to you years ago during your own awkward, root-challenged climb into mentorship. Torch held still, ash made soft. Stories outlive hands and cough. Stone to finger, bone to fire, teach until the knees retire. You chuckle faintly on that last line. Knees retiring weren't mentioned back when that chant was written, but your knees are definitely filing informal complaints. You hear a shuffle behind you. You turn, slow, and there's Fico, in half a tunic, face painted with fruit dye streaks that make him look like a raccoon halfway through self-discovery. His voice is quiet. "I had a dream teacher last night," he whispers. "They said the river has thoughts, but they're slow, really slow." You nod. "Like Barev spirit math." He grins, nods. Just like that. Then, without asking, he sits next to you on the ledge and pulls a small stick from behind his ear. Start carving softly. No more words. Just 2 people on the cusp of something listening to the night breathe. You don't stop him, because maybe this cliff is a classroom too. Fico hums absent-mindedly as he carves, each tiny motion of his stick etching into the soft pine bark like sound into silence. Beside him you sit still, not correcting, not advising, just letting the quiet be what it needs to be. The night has deepened now, fully wrapped around the camp like a giant sleeping bear. The torches by the torch ring flicker low, wind-kept and lazy, casting drawn-out shadows that twitch across the rocks. The stars blink in their usual pattern, and yet, somehow, tonight, they feel closer. This hour is not for tools, not even for stories. This is dream time. You rise slowly, not wanting to disturb Fico, still tracing circles into the stick now nestled in his lap, and make your way back through the dust-tinted footpaths of your little kingdom of learning. You step over bones embedded in the ground, like lost commas in a language no one speaks anymore. Your shoulders ache, but it's comforting now, like old robes. Inside the main cave, the students have finally stilled. You breathe them in without even meaning to. The scent of singed root, flint dust, moss-stuffed sandals, and the ever-present undertone of somebody definitely didn't wash their hands after mushroom gathering. One student, Skyla, maybe, is curled asleep next to the goat. You're not completely sure which arrived first, but they embrace every night like siblings. The goat opens one eye, sees it's just you, and closes it again, clearly unimpressed by your very important educator energy. You walk softly between sleeping forms. There's poetry in the way their limbs tangle together, like vines branching off the root system of something far older than you. You wonder, briefly, if some of the soft-sung chants you taught today will make it into their dreams. Ancient people treated dreaming differently than we do now. For many tribal groups, dreams weren't weird movies your brain watched while resting. They were lessons, portals, confirmations. Early cultures often believed dreams carried messages from ancestors or from parts of yourself not yet born. You're not saying you're a dream expert, but once, after a long week and eating some questionably fermented berries, you woke up convinced the teeth of the stars had whispered a new counting method to you. It didn't add up at all, but you still teach it, just in case. Back at your space, the side of the cave near the old sleeping alcove, you find the familiar groove in the stone where your hip has rested 100 nights. You slide into it like it was carved just for you. Maybe it was. Not by you, though. By some teacher before. And once again, your thoughts circle the mystery that's clung to you for years now. The vanished teacher. There's no name, no burial marker. Just myths traded in hushed tones and a few older students who remember the one before you. The one who knew the sky's oldest code. The one who could speak owl tongue and forge fire from nothing but thought and breath. Historians still argue whether teaching roles in Paleolithic communities were formalized, or if people simply taught until they died, or were taken by disease, predators, or migration. You'll probably never know what became of your predecessor, but you wonder, did they ever sit here, hand on this very ledge, watching students sleep and hoping, against all odds, that they didn't waste a day? Did they ever look into the fire too long and see more ghosts than coals? Did they ever get squirrel skulls thrown at them? You smile. A real one this time. You pull the heavy woven fur over your knees and settle in. The wind outside has picked up now, humming low through the entrance, carrying with it the slow, rhythmic beat you were waiting for. The drums. Far off, on the other side of the valley, A cousin clan must be in their own dream time. Someone's drumming in slow threes. Dum, dum, dum. The beat echoing between cliff faces like a lullaby for the old stone itself. Drum beats in your people have meaning. Each rhythm is a message when you know how to listen. 1 beat for fire lit, 2 for someone's passage, 3 for dreams. The students don't wake, not one stirring soul, but they hear it in their own way. A toe curl here, a twitching eyelid. It seeps in. That's how it works. The dreams drop into them like seeds. You remember once describing dream time to the students as a place where time loops like braided hair, and your thoughts ride mammoths. Jojo laughed so hard she couldn't breathe for 3 minutes. But afterward, she swore a mammoth told her to build a double arrow with hollow reeds. So, maybe it wasn't wrong. You hum softly to the beat now. Not a song, just a note, almost a vibration. You stare at the glowing cave walls. Some of today's art still clings to them. Sloppy stick-bear rides, spiraled suns, charcoal hands like echo prints from 1,000 years ago that unfolded into your ones. You think again of the carving, Skinu's artifact. It's in your pouch now, close to your hip, and you get the familiar tingle, the one that says, tomorrow. You'll pass it into new hands, or maybe add it quietly to the sleeper's offering stone, where memory and dreams meet and aren't all that separate anymore. You close your eyes. The cave breathes quietly around you. The raven twitches in its sleep, rustling a loose feather. Someone nearby, Fico, mumbles something about root monsters. The drums pulse one more time, then fade into the wind. You whisper something. No one will hear it, but it travels anyway. Teach me something in return. Because even after all of this, after the fires and flint and frog-based economics, you're still learning. That's the secret. You always are. And somewhere behind your eyelids, the charcoal suns begin to spin. You awaken not all at once, but in soft, widening ripples. Morning doesn't crash down anymore like it used to when you were a younger teacher, scrambling to find your mask of authority in time for breakfast. Chaos. Now, it drifts. It arrives. The light slips into the cave as a suggestion, not a demand. Your bones vote against rising immediately, creaking their usual complaints, but you press your hands to the familiar stone ledge and let your body negotiate its way upright. You sit for a long time, just watching the students sleep. Fico's still in his carving trance, reflexively shaping circles despite his eyelids fluttering like he's dreaming of fireflies. Skyla's goat has moved. You don't know when. You don't know how. But the goat now sleeps on top of her. Jojo's snoring, loudly. For a child that size, it defies every known law of acoustics. They are, all of them, messes. And miracles. You rise and move outside soundlessly, walking down the stone path as the sun rolls just low enough to catch on the farthest ridge. The morning stirs slowly in the landscape, mist rising like old ghosts stretching their arms, birds making indecisive throat sounds. Nothing urgent, just time doing what it does best. You pick up your staff, trail a finger through the morning dew on a nearby rock, and say your usual greeting. Still here. Still trying. No one answers. They rarely do. But you say it anyway, because this morning is different. Years have passed now, more than you'd imagined when you first arrived to teach, bark-robed and too confident, ready to fix everything with a song and a dangerously untested bone game. You've taught students who've gone on to hunt, lead, even parent. Yari left seasons ago, quiet and deliberate. The wind still bends differently when her name is spoken. Jojo became a healer. Rumor says she also accidentally started a dance tradition involving mashed beetles and humming. Naturally. Jet? Jet disappeared into the North Trails with his raven and came back a year later with new tattoos and warnings about sky dogs. You still haven't figured out if he's lying, or joking, or worshipped. Probably all three. They're not students anymore. They've grown beyond you. You knew they would. You were just the fire starter, the stone that sparked a path, then gently cracked away so something else could take shape. And now, there's someone new, sitting on your story throne. You didn't choose her, not directly. But one night, 3 moons ago, Fico began teaching the younger ones without being asked. Just started. Created a chant, invented a fire crab myth, gave constructive feedback during bone counting, without insults or throwing pebbles. The moment you noticed it, you felt both sadness and relief. Like lying down after carrying something warm and heavy for too long. You still teach, of course. You'll always carry that shape in your spine. But now, you teach through questions, from the edges. You watch more than speak. You offer thoughts instead of orders. You are being replaced. Slowly, gently, willingly. And so, you pass it on. You reach into your satchel and pull out the final gift. The final gesture. Because today is the day. Your old curved tusk blade. The one carved by your own teacher. The one you've used in every flint circle, every torch ceremony, every student naming right. Its edge is worn smooth. Its tip is still singing its own secret vibration. You leave it quietly at the foot of the story throne, in front of the girl who now holds your rhythm. She doesn't look at you when she sees it. Not directly, but her shoulders square, her breath anchors, and her next sentence to the children is quieter, more certain. She knows. You step away. No one says goodbye. No one needs Ongtu. That's not how teachers leave at this time. There's no bell, no party, no plaque. You simply ease out of the circle and fade like firelight. You walk the ridge path now more than you walk the classroom ring. You tell stories to birds. You count rabbit paths for your own amusement. Occasionally, a student or a child of a student visits and asks, "What should I teach?" And you always smile. You say, "The truth, the lie, and the joke, the world runs on those." They never know if you're serious. That's the best part. You grow older. The cave becomes memory, and memory becomes a warm blur. And one dusk, so many seasons later, during a red twilight strange with humidity and wind, a drumbeat echoes through the valley. Not one you taught, not the 3-beat of dream time. A new one. You smile, close your eyes, and let yourself be taught. And now, it's time to let this place settle. Let the fire dim slightly lower in your imagination. The echoes of laughter fade to embers, and the weight of the fur cloak soften across your shoulders. You've walked through a day like no other, a world shaped by stone and memory and fading smoke. A time when lessons had no chalkboards or apps or lines in a gradebook, just stories passed between breaths, between heartbeats. Just think, all of that was once real. Maybe it still is. Close your eyes if you haven't already. Let yourself drift, not just into sleep, but into the arches of the cave, the hush beneath the stars, The feeling of soot on your fingertips, and your name being chanted softly by students too small to remember a time without you? You were in the first classroom. You were the second fire. You were the reason they learned to believe in themselves. And now it's okay to rest, to ease back. The torch has passed. The cave remembers you. And that makes all the difference.